Steve Wozniak from Apple.
Don't necessarily think that you have to have the home run and the huge Apple computer on your first start. I spent a long time in my life with skills just building little devices for fun. For fun is one of the key things, because that drives you to think and think and think and make it better and better and better than you ever would if you're doing it for a company. Build things at first for yourself that you would want.
Welcome to the Mindset by Design podcast with your host and NLP expert, Andy Murphy, where you will learn the tips, tricks, and strategies he teaches his world-class clients to give you the skills to dominate any business.
What's going on, Mindset by Design crew, and welcome to episode 424. Hope you're amazing as always and life is treating you pretty awesome. A couple of things to get started. One, I realize that I've been a little bit lack and luster at putting out these episodes. A little bit slow. I've been really busy. Look, you've got 423 other episodes to go through, and I really hope you're enjoying them. I've been doing so much traveling, so many other things are going on outside of the podcast, and but guess what? I'm committed to it. I love it, and so first of all, I'm just going to apologize. So make sure that you're tuning in and checking in. I really mean that, and what else? Number 2, the sound quality. The sound quality is because, again, traveling. I'm doing this from not my normal microphone. In maybe a month, maybe a little bit less, everything will be sorted again and I'll have a kick-ass mic and I'll be able to crank these episodes out. But for now, keep listening, keep tuning in, because there's lots of other good stuff. And make sure that you're heading over to andymurphy.online or follow me on social, or make sure that you're on my email list. Just make sure that you're on the email list. And you can go and download some amazing, Total Mind Control Handbook. You can go and get that for free right now. You can also go and check out the 8figurethinker.com or the 8-Figure Thinker, which is in the shop inside of where? Yep, you got it, andymurphy.online. Just to keep up to date with what I'm doing, because as I said, I mentioned last episode, I'm building a presentation right now because I'm going to be speaking on stage with a lot of billionaires. We've got some wild names that are in 2 of these events. One I'm going to be a guest at. Yeah, I've been invited by the owner of the company. I'm going to be a guest, and it's the world's #1 family office conference forum, and family office is basically a hedge fund that looks after a high net worth individual or family's money. So these are multi-billionaires. A minimum is 150 million under assets. So these are some amazing people that I'm going to be around and going to be on stage in the Cayman Islands, which is going to be awesome. The other one's in New York, and I've been really focusing on that. And I want to share all these goodies and techniques and tips to everybody. So I put together something really cool, and it should be out next week. And it is, if you don't know what a flow state is, then this is the training for you. If you want to be able to fold time, and simply, let me explain it like this. Have you ever had an experience where you just got something done effortlessly, and it was really hard? You could look at this as a professional athlete. You know, sometimes you watch these people on TV or live, and sometimes they are on fire and sometimes they're not. Makes sense, right? And we can probably relate to that in your own life, right? Some days you're on fire, some days you're not. Well, imagine if you could pretty much guarantee that you could always be on fire. Well, that brainwave or that peak state is something called a flow state. It used to be called the zone, so it might be more easier to understand, but we all have moments of being in the zone. So what I wanted to share with you is a training of how to basically predict and how to utilize yourself to get inside of the zone, inside of flow. And that's the training I've got coming out for you, and it's going to be free and you're going to love it. So keep going to andymurphy.online to make sure that happens, right? Because that's my gift to you. That's my gift to you. I want you to be able to perform at your best every single day, no matter what the stress is, no matter what the overwhelm is, no matter what whatever you're going through. We've all been there. And I just want you to have the tools that you need to be able to make the best decisions, to get the best ideas, to take the best action every single day. Does that sound good? I hope so. So make sure that you're heading over to andymurphy.online, and if you don't have the Total Mind Control Handbook, go and get it. It's badass. You're gonna love it. It's really gonna help, and it's actually gonna make it easier for you to understand the training that I'm gonna be putting out in the next week or so. Just waiting for my tech girl to finish off building the things. It's all designed. It's all ready to go. So that's the first thing. Second thing I've got coming out is you definitely need to be on my email list, because it's probably the only place you're going to get it. And that is, well, I've got 3 exclusive packages that are going to be coming out. I've got a sale. It's going to be a 5-day sale starting next week, and I want you to make sure that you are part of it, because it's going to be an absolute game changer. I'm not going to spoil it. I'm going to wait for you to jump into it, but you're going to absolutely love it. So head over to andymurphy.online. Like it? Good. So, crew, what's today's about? Today is about, well, I was actually going to put another Elon Musk episode out, and people shout at me all the time because stop talking about Elon, and I get it. I just started to listen to his biography, and if you've not listened to it or read it, it's brand new. It makes you realize he's a super freak in every way of the term, good, bad, every different way. He's amazing, but he's also a little bit different from most humans that are out there. So I want you to read that book, and I was going to actually go back and find a previous episode, and I did, of when I broke down his autobiography, or autobiography about him. That's it. And I didn't like the sound quality. Didn't like it. It was worse than this. It was an old one, but it was really detailed. So what I did instead was pull up a brilliant episode where I took 50 quotes from multi-millionaires to give you motivation, to give you drive, to give you passion, give you that aha, which we all need sometimes. We all need it. And I want you to be able to listen to this episode and just pump yourself up with some true wisdom. But that's what today's episode's about. So I know you're going to love it. I'm going to get on with it. I'm going to shut up now, and I'll see you at the end of the show. Until then, why don't you head over to andymurphy.online, grab that book while it's still there, because it's not going to be very soon. And I want to share some awesome experiences with you that I've got available on my 5-day sale next week. So go and do it. And I'll see you at the end of the show. I want you to realize that for you who are new to my story, I want to put this episode together. It's about motivation, and it's about entrepreneurial motivation. And I'm going to introduce you a few concepts, but I'm really going to play a load of clips from people like Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg and all those people, because those are the people that I've always aspired to be like. And I don't mean that in the money context. Years ago when I was 26 and stuff, yeah, absolutely. That's what I was heading towards. But as I've got older, my priorities have shifted. The things I value shift. I also have become very, very aware of the consequences, good and bad, to actually pursuing to get 100 million or $1 billion or something extreme like that. There's a lot of other sacrifices in your life you have to make. And a little bit about my story. If you've never heard it, right, I'm not going to go into it. I'm going to point you to a link another day, right, so you can listen to it in full. But at the age of 24 years old, I was working in computers in the UK, and I just flew
the other side of the world. I didn't want anything to do with Europe because it was too easy. I was working in IT at the time, and a little secret, by the way, and I'll let you into a little bit of a secret. At that point, before I got into computers, I was working in a car factory. Before that, I was washing dishes in restaurants, and there was just no work in Liverpool when I left school. And I fell into a few different jobs, but I was working in a car factory, and it was horrible. It was horrible. And at that moment, I was going out with a girl for like 4 years, and she had relatives in Australia, and that's where we went. I was working in that car factory on the line, putting parts together, and it was like feeling like you were in a prison. You literally were trying to, you were trying to survive each day. You know, it's violent in there. It was crazy in there, right? And so I saw Australia with my girlfriend at the time, and we went for a month with the relatives. And I remember coming back, and the decision I made in my head was, I don't know how I'm getting back, but I know for 100% certain I'm coming back to Australia very, very soon. And the thing was, I came back. And I was working in this job, and I just couldn't handle it anymore. And then computers popped up. And 15 years ago, that was the IT industry was booming, right? It was just going through that peak. So I jumped into computers. But the thing was, I didn't own a computer. I'd never even double-clicked a mouse. And I didn't have any money to buy a computer, right? So I started studying. And I studied a lot. And then basically spent 18 hours a day studying from books, still didn't have a computer, and basically failed the Microsoft Certified Professional Qualification. How many times? 8. Think about this. I failed it 8 times. I still didn't have a computer. Do you think it stopped me? No. I went to job interview after job interview. I traveled, I drove, I went everywhere until I found the right company for me. And I was very, very lucky, and it was a very, very rich company. Like Aston Martin's, Ferraris in the driveway, 99% of all Concorde bookings in the world went through them. They were a luxury holiday company in a place called Chester in the UK, an old Roman town overlooking a beautiful river. And that's my first smell of money. And my questions were asking, how do I do that? How do I get that? How? I'd never even seen money before. I'm from a very working class background, right? And at that moment, my brain started to shift, and a year and a half went by working in computers. And the thing was, I started to cause chaos. And I really did start to cause chaos because I was a little bit bored, knew there was an advancement for me, and my manager really liked me. And he said, look, Andy, this is a tight-knit company. There's no really where for you to progress up. So what I'm going to do is give you 3 months' money. You go and get the qualification that you need, and then you go and get the job that you want. And I was like, really? He's like, yep. I said, awesome. I'm going to Australia. I studied for another 6 weeks, passed the Microsoft qualification, and flew to Australia. Didn't know anyone, didn't have a job, and didn't even get into computers. This is where NLP all started. I don't know why I'm telling you this story right now. I've got no idea, but if this is the first time that you're listening, bear with me or go and listen to some previous episodes, right? So there I was, arrived in Australia. And what was amazing about that was I remember only having £2,000 in my bank account. And by the way, I spent that in a month because I was staying in hotels because I didn't want to stay in hostels and I didn't have anywhere else to stay. And I remember standing outside this hotel that I couldn't afford to be in anymore. And I had my bags, and my bags were pushed against the wall. I was standing in front of my bags, and I was just looking left, right, like being a soldier, protecting my stuff. And then I had this huge aha moment. And the huge aha moment was, I'm the only person doing this, being this angry, being this stressed. And I started to relax. And I also know I needed to find work fast. So I got some agency work and we were on the phones and stuff. Never done anything like that before. And then I went, right, where do I really want to work in the whole of Sydney in Australia? And I went, I want to work in Armani, Versace or Hugo Boss. Honestly, this is what I said to myself. I'd never worked in retail really before. And basically put a resume, CV together and walked in those 3 places, nowhere else. Those 3 places, walked up to them and went, here's my resume, have you got a job? Crazy thing was, all of them said yes. Right there, right then, they said yes, right? Maybe I was better looking when I was younger or something, right? And then I worked at Armani because I was into labels back then, full of ego and stupidity. And that's where my life changed. Because I went out to a party, and it was a private party in an amazing place, obviously in Sydney, an exclusive place. And there was a gentleman there. And he said to me, he goes, I'll get you a job, buddy. And I said, yeah, whatever, mate. Here's my number, whatever. And he goes, I will, mate. I'll phone you tomorrow. And I was like, whatever. And he did. And that job interview was where I first started learning sales. It's where I was introduced to NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming. And within the side of 5-6 months, I became one of the top performers in Australia. Then we got headhunted to New Zealand to work in investment real estate because that was blowing up back then. And I came in within 6 weeks. I was promoted to manager, then started to break every sales record, closed everything in the company, then headhunted to multiple companies, breaking every record in every company. And then time went by and I got bored basically. Like for example, the sales record was like 9 sales in a row. So 9 individual clients, individual property sales. I came in and closed 24 in a row, right? So destroyed all of these records and did that in multiple companies. And this is where I developed the skill for neuro-linguistic programming. And I'd seen up to like 2,000 people at that stage, right? After a fair few years of doing it. And I knew I was the best at what I did, but I also was getting very, very bored. By the way, I was working 2 days a week earning great money, but was stressed and anxious all the time because it wasn't in alignment with myself. And what happened there, my friend bought a newspaper clipping back from Dubai. I remember this little piece of paper and it said on it, the Worldwide Property Fair. And I was like, I'm going to take Australian and New Zealand real estate over to Dubai. This is 26 years old. And guess what? I'd never built a business before. So I went to a guy who was working with me, a much older guy, who allegedly was very, very retired from real estate. And I went to him for advice about a business plan. And he knew who I was, my reputation. And I sat down with him in his house, and good guy and all the rest of it, got on well with him. And he was putting a project together to build a resort in Fiji. You know, it was all theoretical at that point from his side. And he was like, well, why don't we take this project, your idea, and blast it and let's go to Dubai and sell it down? And I was like, then all these numbers, when you start to see numbers and zeros wrote down, especially at that age, it changes things. It gets me excited and motivated. And guess what we did for the next 6 months? We built this project, right? And we did take that over to Dubai, and we were selling it down next to the Palms, Dubai Land, the Burj Khalifa, which is the top, the biggest building in the world. And we were selling it down all off the plan next to all these people. I met the Sheikh over Abu Dhabi who was actually looking at, like, he came over and said to me, how much for the whole island? And I was like, I don't know. See, people playing at different levels. That would have been like 100 million or something, right? And we came back. Everything was going great. And at that point, I went to work for my business partner in his company. And that's where everything went wrong, because my dad also invested money, and my business partner thought it was awesome not to give me any business and also steal all my money. So that sent me into bankruptcy. It sent me into a nervous breakdown, and I lost every single thing in my life. my second 5 Series BMW, my house, my investment property, my professional model as a girlfriend, right? All gone. Gone. Think about that, right? Earning great money, beautiful life, gone. And I moved into the basement of a gym. Yeah, training and fighting MMA every day, which was a lot of fun. It really was. I loved it. But it's not fun to not be able to afford food, not to be able to afford rent and bills. That's a horrible situation, right? And at that point, and the whole purpose in why I'm telling you this big, long story was because that's where I rebuilt my life. With pure intent, with pure focus. And this is what I was saying in this Facebook post the other day, right? Or yesterday, actually. But my point is, I remember sitting there in that room and I said to myself, okay, Andy, listen, you know you're good at what you do. You've seen over 2,000 people face to face. You're one of the top in the country. If not the top in the country, you know what you can do. So now what? You're going to stay here? You're going to continue having this type of life? Now what? What is it you want? And honestly, this image is so vivid in my head. So vivid. And it was, the little voice said, what is your perfect day? Forget money. What is your perfect day? How would you want to spend your day? And back then it was like, well, I want to be able to travel anywhere I want in the world. I want to be able to earn $1,000 from my laptop sitting on the beach. I want to be able to work with UFC fighters and professional fighters. I want to, right? And all of this started to come. And then I wrote, what are the top 10 things I would be most excited to do each day? And I wouldn't even give a shit if I got paid or not. And I wrote all those things down. And then magic started to happen. It really did. And it's a longer story and I'm not going to go into it. But basically, through synchronicity, I borrowed money instead of going to a job in Hong Kong to work for one of the largest real estate developers, which, by the way, they'd interviewed me 2 or 3 times and they wanted to fly me over that week. But my intuition kicked in and something didn't feel quite right. And instead, I borrowed money and flew to LA for 5 days for an NLP course. And that's where everything changed. And I came back from to New Zealand. I trained up for a fight. I fought and then left back to Australia, left back to America and the UK and started to get qualified and really took my NLP game to the next level. And my first client became Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion Steve Oliver from New Zealand, which is UFC fighter Mark Hunt's coach. And that's where I started working with professional fighters in LA, and that transitioned into everything you can imagine, from post-traumatic stress disorder to OCD face-picking disorders to anxiety attacks where doctors couldn't fix these people and they're collapsing on the floor, to special force commandos, for people getting ready for cage fighting, for everything you can possibly imagine. And that's the world it took me forwards into working specifically with entrepreneurs over the world. And this is my journey. And why do I tell you this? Because now I'm recognized as one of the top people in the world in neurolinguistics and this type of coaching. And it's pretty amazing when I look at my resume from working with Saudi Arabian royalty to people who are worth 100 million to everyone else in between. Go to mindsetbydesign.co/about to see everybody. But it's amazing. And the reason why I'm telling you this is not to say I'm awesome, but the opposite is to say you can be awesome too, right? You can live any goddamn life you want. It's not an excuse to stay where you are, right? Rant over. Don't know where that came from, but whatever. It's out, right? So hopefully that inspired somebody. But the point is, I want to motivate you. And today what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a clip. And I'm just going to, in between each clip, and they're only very, very short clips, but each clip I'm going to announce who the name of the person is about to speak, who's going to drop that wisdom on you, right? Sound good? Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. So, shake it out. There's the rant over. Okay, crew, just before we actually jump into this, I just want to let you know there's actually, I just added them up, there's 50 clips. Don't worry, they're only like, some of them are like 20 seconds long, but there's still 50 clips. So you're going to hear me introduce 50 people. But there's some brilliant advice in here. I mean, we're talking some of the best entrepreneurs in the tech industry and everything else in the world right now. So hope you enjoy. See you at the end. The first clip is by the one and only Jeff Bezos from Amazon.
Do something you're very passionate about, and don't try to chase what is kind of the hot passion of the day.
Now, Steve Jobs.
People say you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing, and it's totally true. And the reason is because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard, and you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, if you're not having fun doing it, you don't really love it, you're going to give up.
Pierre Omidyar from eBay.
So just go and do it, try, learn from it. You'll fail at some things. That's a learning experience that you need so that you can take that on to the next experience. And don't let people who you may respect and who you believe know what they're talking about, don't let them tell you it can't be done. Because often they will tell you it can't be done, and it's just because they don't have the courage to try it.
Michael Dell, founder of Dell Computers.
I think people that look for great ideas to make money, aren't nearly as successful as those who say, okay, what do I really love to do? What am I excited about? What do I know something about? What's kind of interesting and compelling?
Sergey Brin from Google.
It's very rewarding when you work on something you think is going to make a big difference. And it's a little bit harder, but I think the passion that one might bring with it brings so much more energy to that you're more likely to succeed.
Biz Stone from Twitter.
You have to have an emotional investment in what you're doing. If you don't love what you're doing, failure is pretty much guaranteed. Success is not guaranteed by any means, but failure is much more likely if you don't love what you're doing.
Gary Vaynerchuk.
If you know exactly what you want to be, you need to spend as much time with people that are actually that already.
Daniel Elk from Spotify.
One of the things that I do is I question a lot of things. And you can do that in a good way and a bad way, but hopefully if you try to get people to motivate why they're doing something and their way of thinking, the worst thing you can end up with is a situation where you get told, well, this is the way it's always been. Mm-hmm. That's the worst ever. That's a non-answer. Instead, ask yourself, given everything we have today, is there a way we can make this better?
Kevin Rose, Dig.
And so when we're coming up with ideas, we always ask ourselves, what kind of new market is this creating? And then also what part of my day and what problem is it solving? And so I've gone as far as taking an entire catalog of my day from the moment I open my eyes and writing down every single thing I do, and then asking myself, is there something here?
If you're not coming up with 10 ideas a day, that's why I have this thing. If I'm not filling up this page every single day, then my idea muscle will atrophy. And I started this in 2001, and I still do it every single day. You have to come up with ideas every single day, or the idea muscle atrophies. The good news is, after about 6 months of doing that, you're like a machine. People get surprised at how many ideas you could just have anywhere.
James Altucher, Stock Picker.
But understand that naturally nobody is interested in your idea. The world could care less, and you have to persuade them, and you have to show that you're the one person out there that can do it.
Robert Kiyosaki from Apple.
When it comes to changing the world, what I learned from Steve Jobs is if you believe in a Macintosh, if you believe in iPhone, iPod, iPad, if you believe enough, then you will see it because other people will believe in it. Other people will create software. Other people will create products. So you need to foster the belief in what you are dreaming so that it becomes a reality, which is very different than saying, I don't expect anybody to believe it until I see it. You need people to believe it before they can see it.
Steve Wozniak from Apple.
Don't necessarily think that you have to have the home run and the huge Apple computer on your first start. I spent a long time in my life with skills just building little devices for fun. For fun is one of the key things because that drives you to think and think and think and make it better and better and better than you ever would if you're doing it for a company. Build things at first for yourself that you would want.
Mark Cuban from the Shark Tank and many other places.
For somebody aspiring to, take things to the next level or to even surpass their wildest dreams, there's always going to have to be an element of luck. But I think more important is putting yourself in a business that can be ubiquitous, that really doesn't have limits. Because otherwise, there's always going to be a grind to it. But if the business, if it can't be something that you can visualize every business using or every consumer using, it's going to be tough to scale to be big enough or to have the perceived value.
Sam Altman from Y Coordinator.
Idea about what you can say. I know it sounds like a bad idea, but here's specifically why it's actually a great one. You want to sound crazy, but you want to actually be right.
Tony Fadell, Nest.
Because when you're trying to differentiate, when you're trying to do something different, there's going to be that gut moment, that gut sense. Is this right? Is this not right? If you're not having doubt, you're not pushing the boundaries far enough.
Danae Ringelman from Indiegogo.
Don't think about how do I get big fast? That will happen if you actually build something super meaningful and super important. So don't think about, what is the quickest way to success? Think about what is the best way to building something important that the world really needs.
Simon Sinek, Start With Why.
This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do, 100%. Some know how they do it, whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP. But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. It's always a result. By why, I mean what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your organization exist?
Seth Godin.
So when we see a kid with a lemonade stand, it's different than when we see a vending machine selling lemonade, even if it's exactly the same product, because the story around it is what people are paying for. So when I meet small business people, all I ask them is not what's their balance sheet, but what's their story. Why should I pick you? Why do I care about what you're doing? And if you start giving me all this inside baseball statistics about why you're 2% better than some other competitor, I'm already glazed over, because that's not part of the way I see the world.
Ev Williams, Medium.
That I have to want this to exist in the world. I have to not, so it's a similar rule, just say, if this was successful and I had nothing and I was not involved and I got no money off it or would I want it to do well? And that's a great check, I think, to know if you really feel good about the idea and can be passionate about it.
Reid Hoffman, LinkedIn.
One of the things I advise entrepreneurs to do is when you have an idea, a classic entrepreneurial impulse is to hold the idea close to you and not go tell people because, the idea is so special.
Right.
That's almost always a mistake. Go talk to
Why is that a mistake? Yeah.
It's a mistake because your actual real competitive advantage is not that you have this idea that you have locked away in your closet, which may or may not be accurate and you have no idea which it is. Your actual competitive advantage is if you're assembling the intelligence around, does this idea work? What is the right teams? What is the right learnings? And we're essentially in motion.
Jack Dorsey, Twitter.
The hardest thing to do is start. You have all these ideas and everyone has an idea, but it's really about executing the idea and building the idea and attracting other people to help you work on the idea. That is the biggest challenge. But the way to begin is to get the idea out of your head, draw it out, talk about it, program it if you're a programmer, or make it if you're building something.
Kevin Systrom, Instagram.
Like, you don't have to be the best, but you have to be dangerous, right? You have to learn just enough to be dangerous to build an idea, concept it, and show it to the world. And then it turns out there are lots of other people, including all 170 employees that work at Instagram, who are much better at doing all that stuff than I am. But you need to find people who can, be drawn to the idea that you build, and then they end up taking it and making it even better.
Drew Houston, Dropbox.
One way to conceptualize what makes a good product is, good engineering is part of it, good design is part of it, but really it's, one way I think about it is maximizing the probability that someone shows up at the front door of, your store or your website or whatever it is and ends up with a solved problem.
Brian Chesky, Airbnb.
And oftentimes the best methodology is to start with the perfect experience with just one person, get that right, and then figure out how to scale something great instead of scaling something not so great and then trying to improve it. That's really hard.
Peter Thiel, PayPal.
To do.
And so I think when you are starting a new business, you don't want to go after giant markets. You want to go after small markets, and you want to take over those markets quickly.
Elon Musk.
Constantly seek criticism.
Yeah.
A well thought out critique of whatever you're doing is as valuable as gold. And you should seek that from everyone you can, but particularly your friends.
Adam Schaaf, Imgur.
If you're not utilizing an online community, then you're at a disadvantage to those who are. You can be asking online communities what they think about your ideas, or if they have any advice with what you're working on. Not only will you hear from people who are passionate about the subject, but you'll be hearing from people all around the world, each with their own experiences and stories that can help you.
Chris Sacca, venture capitalist.
And there are a lot of people from whom we can learn a lot. And I think the one piece of advice is don't underestimate anyone you come across ever. Right. Whether they're, a blue collar worker waiting for the bus, or they're, helping you they're the server or bartender at the restaurant, or they're a lower ranking employee. I mean, the smartest leaders I've ever seen have always gone around the room and asked for everybody's opinion.
Paul Graham, Y Combinator.
Most startups that fail do it ultimately because they did not make something that people wanted. They made something that, that they thought people would want, but they were either in denial about it, whether it was actually any good, or somebody else came along and made something that people wanted even more.
Dennis Crowley from Foursquare.
The best piece of advice that we've figured out as we've been doing Foursquare is not to let other people distract what you're doing. There's always haters that say, your idea is stupid, this idea is never going to work, don't even bother doing that because someone else is going to do it before you do. And if we listened to all that feedback that we were getting, all that negative feedback, we would never have built things, we would never have prototyped things. And that's how we really got to where we are. We saw things that we wanted to build, and we just went out and built them. And it turns out when you build stuff that you like to use, there's a good chance that there's thousands of other people that want to use it too.
Eric Ries, from the author of The Lean Startup.
And so it's not just about doing focus groups. It's not just about double checking your vision. It really is about integrating this concept of testing our ideas rigorously throughout the product development process, throughout the marketing process, even as we scale up.
Leah Busk from TaskRabbit.
But what you really need to do is think about what is the smallest possible test that I can run for this idea, for this concept, for this theory, get it out there and get customers using it. Because your customers are going to be the ones to tell you if it's really working or not.
Anthony Casalino from Squarespace.
Like there's almost this expectation that you have to have in your mind this sort of, I'm going to change the world, sort of make a dent in the universe kind of ambition, right? But it's actually okay early on to just kind of solve small problems in layers until you actually get to a point where you have the capacity to do that.
Alexis Ohanian from Reddit.
What this all comes down to is doing something exceptional for your users, whether it's in community, whether it's in connection, or whether it's in design. This is our big advantage as a startup, is that we can actually get away with doing this. We can make this the core part of why we're doing business.
Jason Fried from Basecamp.
I think you should be spending your money on teaching and sharing. And so that might mean hiring a writer or two, perhaps, instead of a marketing person. And start writing and start getting people to listen to what you're saying. You can't talk about yourself all the time because no one's going to come back for that. But you have to talk about things that are relevant to your industry or ideas that you have and start to build that audience up.
Palmer Luckey from Oculus Rift.
I do think that one thing that's important is, especially if you're a founder or a technical founder, is to realize that you can't do everything. And even if you can, you shouldn't.
Naval Ravian from AngelList.
You should find a great partner no matter what it is that you're doing. And you should look for someone who is very high intelligence, very high energy, and very high integrity. And you need all three of those. You can't compromise on any one of them. Otherwise, you'll end up with either someone who's not smart, which does you no good, or someone who's not hardworking, which also does you no good. Or the worst case is you end up with a smart, hardworking crook who ends up working against your interests. And integrity is something that takes a lot of time spent with someone to figure out.
Ben Sibberman from Pinterest.
The most important thing when you're working with people early is that you guys line up on what your goals are. That sounds really basic, but you can totally, it can be fine. You can want to build a small business that makes money and you don't have to go to an office every day. Or you can want to build a huge company. You can want to build Google. But I think you have to be really, really aligned on that.
Tony Hesias Zappos.
When a lot of corporations have, they might call them core values or guiding principles or so on, but the problem is usually they're very lofty sounding. They kind of read like a press release the marketing department put out. They sound just like their competitors, and maybe you learn about it on day one of your job, but then it becomes this meaningless plaque on the lobby wall. Well, we wanted to come up with committable core values, and by committable, meaning we're willing to hire or fire people based on those values, completely independent of their actual job performance.
Andrew Mason from Groupon.
The definition of values is they're the behaviors or principles that you religiously adhere to within your company. When I say religious, I mean that no amount of data will sway you from those principles, and the degree to which that you have the courage to maintain your conviction around those ideas is the degree to which you're going to be successful over the long term.
Sir Richard Branson.
A company is simply a group of people. And as a leader of people, you have to be a great listener, and you have to be a great motivator. You have to be very good at praising and looking for the best in people. People are no different from flowers. If you water flowers, they flourish. If you praise people, they flourish. And that's a critical attribute of a leader.
Alex Lejong, SoundCloud.
So I kind of like half jokingly with a lot of people say that, my job is basically like to be the assistant for the rest of the company. Like my job is to make sure that like you have what you need, that it's and basically you have everything you need to kick ass. Like that's my job. If you don't have that, then let me know because I'm not doing my job.
Justin Kahn from Justin.tv.
There are a lot of things that are outside of your control. A lot of external circumstances will determine the success of your idea, whether the market timing is right for this new kind of service, or whether people, whether a customer, like the economy is right for your kind of service, right? Whether you meet the right people who will finance your company. Many external circumstances are like outside of your control and but will affect the outcome, and you have to be okay with that.
Jessica Livingston from Y Combinator.
Another quality that I think is important is kind of being flexible-minded or open-minded. I'm not saying you shouldn't have a vision for your idea or your product, but you need to be open to changes.
Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg.
So many things go wrong when you're starting a company, and often I think people ask, what mistakes should you avoid making? And my answer to that question is don't even bother trying to avoid mistakes because you're going to make tons of mistakes, right? And the important thing is actually learning quickly from whatever mistakes you make and not giving up, Right, and I mean, there are things every single year of Facebook's existence that could have killed us or made it so that it just seemed like moving forward and making a lot of progress just seemed intractable, but you just kind of bounce back and you learn, and nothing is impossible. You just have to kind of keep running through the wall.
Mark Andressian.
The two things we really zero in on people are, two things. They sound simple, they end up being very difficult. Courage and genius. Courage is the one we talk about a lot because it's the one that people can learn. Courage, which is to say not giving up in the face of adversity, just being absolutely determined to succeed, is something that you can like force yourself to do. It can be very painful. You can force yourself to do it. The genius part is a little bit hard to force yourself to do. Courage without genius might not get you where you need to go, but genius without courage almost certainly won't.
Dustin Moskovitz from Facebook.
And I think the reality is just, not quite so glamorous. There's there's an ugly side to being an entrepreneur. And also just more importantly, what you're actually spending your time on is just a lot of hard work. Sam mentioned this, but you're basically just sitting at your desk, heads down, focused, answering customer support emails, doing sales, figuring out hard engineering problems. So it's really important that you kind of like go in with eyes wide open.
And the final two. Should we do a little drum roll? So, Tim Ferriss.
Optimism has a place, but I think even more so for the first-time entrepreneur, you need to be pragmatically pessimistic. What I mean by that is you need to define all of the worst-case scenarios in terms of financial loss, time loss, etc. Look at what you will learn if that happens and accept and come to terms with that before you ever start. If you don't do that and you go straight into battling the world, trying to conquer the world with rose-colored glasses on, the first time you hit a major hiccup, you're going to become really demoralized and you will quit.
And the final one, Emmett Shear from Twitter.
If you don't love it, you won't make it through the long period of pain that is inevitable. So make sure that you take care of yourself during the process. Make sure that you take care of your mental health, your physical health while you're doing it, because it's a long road.
So crew, there we go. The end of episode 424. It's hopefully that really helped. I listened to quite a bit of that again, and there's some golden nuggets in there. There's some gems in there for sure, right? And I really hope that gave you some good motivation about your current situation so you can take action a different way. And I shared my story. I forgot I actually shared my story in there. I was going to tell you at the very, very start, but I actually went into a lot of detail, more than I have in a long time. And hopefully it gives you a little bit more of an insight into everyone's experience. Everyone's unique. Everyone's got their own journey, their own story, their own wild ride. And I'm sure you do too. And I'm here to help you get to that next stage, that next level of life and business. Whether you're doing a 6-figure, 7-figure, 8-figure, 9-figure business, or you're just, whatever it is, I can help you. I can help you, right? So the best thing to do is what? You know the drill by now. Head over to andymurphy.online and take a little look at what's going on. I've got some Forbes articles coming out in the next few weeks. I have, these experiences that I want to share with you, and the sale next week. I've got the new sale, the flow state training coming out that I know you're going to love. I've got lots of things going on. So keep checking into the podcast and, make sure that you write me a review. I'd love that. Make sure you just click that 5 stars, especially if you're on Apple or Spotify. It's nice and easy. And if you want to take things to the next level, well, go to andymurphy.online, click connect with me and fill in the application and we can have a chat. Until then, keep kicking ass, much, much love. And one more thing. Why don't you smile for me?
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode of the Mindset by Design podcast with your host and NLP expert, Andy Murphy. We'll catch you next time.